We are slowly but surely unlocking the true power of Figma. So we know everything that we need to know about auto layout, and we know everything that we need to know about styles. The third important element that we need to take care of are components. And that's gonna help us go into the next module. So design system basics, everything that we're gonna cover there is gonna connect to the styles, auto layout, and components. Components are basically reusable UI elements that we have created and that we're going to reuse in our designs. Most often, like the basic example of a component is something like an input field or a button. And you need to create components in a way that's going to allow you to quickly change different variations of that reusable element. But it can also be just like a reusable element that you have across multiple screens, across multiple pages. Basically, anything that you're reusing in your design should be a component. You're ensuring consistency in that way, and you're also making sure that if a change is needed at some time in the future, that you have the ability to introduce it quickly across all of your screens and states. One thing to keep in mind is when is the right time to create a component. Usually when I'm still kind of exploring things, I'm not going to focus too much on components. But as soon as I notice that I'm copying something like for the second time and that I'm kind of settled on the way that it's going to look and work, I'm going to turn it into a component. There are other designers that prefer to go through weeks of design process and then turns in things into component and go through some kind of a cleanup process. It's really up to you. If I have a hint that I'm going to reuse something and that it's going to be an important element, I turn it into a component. And then if I need to introduce some changes based on client feedback or something, I can just do it in a component, and it's going to, well, maybe there's going to be some cleanup, especially if I introduce some elements or something that kind of messes up with other elements in my interface. But if you, again, slowly but surely introduce components and also include auto layout in your designs of the components and everything else, most likely you're not going to have a lot of cleanup work to handle afterwards. So it's a personal preference. Again, as soon as I'm noticing that I'm copying things a couple of times, or that I have a feeling that this is going to be everything that I need to at this moment cover when it comes to a particular UI element, I'm going to create a component out of it. So yeah, let's start things off with the demo of what components are. And I have a couple of styles ready. If you were following the previous lesson, you already know that, and you already hopefully created a couple of styles, text styles, effect styles, color styles, maybe layout styles, when we were working with grids and layouts. So all of those things you can now reuse when it comes to working with components and in the design system basics module. Okay, so let's first enter on the text in here, and we're gonna demo things with the simplest kind of component for the first time going through this, and it's gonna be a button component. Now, when it comes to button components, sometimes they're gonna have icons, sometimes not. So first things first, I'm gonna bring in a couple of icons to use in our designs. So a couple of common ones are like add, maybe like delete, or something like this. Maybe we can have an arrow that goes left and right, and maybe we can have something that removes it. I don't know. Most often these are going to be enough. And honestly, with 5 of them, we can already demo some things. So that should be fine. I'm hoping that one thing that kind of frustrates me is the fact that these are not frames by default. So I'm just going to switch them into frames. Okay, so now that that's done, I can already start thinking about what's needed next. When it comes to buttons, I'm most likely going to have the icons at like 24 or 20 size. I think 24 is a good starting point. A lot of these will not need a vector in here. Oh, just give me a second to switch this around for a little bit until this is done. Okay, as I've said, I do like to flatten these for a couple of reasons. So what that allows me, they become one shape, and I can still control the stroke size. So in here you can see that I can still go in all of these and make strokes smaller. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna make it 1.5. All of those sizes are now fixed, and when it comes to all of them, I can just rename them and make them say like icon current name. I do prefer calling this close. Yeah, I think that's fine. And when it comes to creating components, there's a couple of options in here. You can create a component, you can create multiple components, or you can create a component set. Now, one thing I've noticed with component sets is that if I did this and I had this icon in here, when it comes to changing the property of the icon, it basically only shows me text. So one helpful tip when you're working with icons, I personally just add them to a frame like this. I call this frame icons or iconography. You can always add some padding if you'd like. Let's give it a background. And this frame, I would then select all of the frames I have in here, and instead of a component set, I will actually turn it into multiple components. So what you'll see now is that when I have this as an item, I'm actually able to see all of them visually, which to me is very helpful, especially when I'm working with hundreds of icons, which is very common in design projects. So instead of this being like a component set that you've seen just a moment ago, they're actually all of their own components, and they're just multiple components contained within the same frame. So all of them would actually appear under icon like this. So you can see it in here. So yeah, we now have 5 components in here for 5 different icons. If I just drag one down in here, you can see the difference in the icon. In here, the main icon is going to have this symbol, while all of the instances of that icon that are reused in your design, so these are the master components, or yeah, master components. In here, where you have an instance, it's going to be an instance of that component, and it's going to have this different symbol. That symbol is going to allow you to detach it. So if you need to do some kind of a change, or you don't want this to actually be tied in with the master component anymore, you can detach it. That's what it does. You can see that now it became a frame again. While all of these ones, if you ever do a change, so yeah, we have the right one in here. If I go in here and make this icon smaller, you can see that the change immediately happened on the icon instance, or of the component instance as well. So that's what components are used for. It's the similar logic to the styles. So if you ever did a change on the master style, all of the styles where that style was used would change as well. So if you ever do a change on the master component, now it's applied to all of the screens where this component is used. So that's kind of the background behind it. We now have icons in here. Let's work with the button. So what we have in here, and I do like to apply the styles immediately. I'm going to do the same thing in here as well. So all of my icons are going to have this feel. And now one of the reasons why I like to do flatten is in here, If I change from arrow left to close, it's gonna stay neutral 900. Now, I know it's not worthy to go back and demo it, but if you didn't have all of these as one shape that has one fill, that has one stroke color, what would happen is, for example, this one is made out of two shapes. This one could be made out of two or three shapes. This one was made just out of one. So if I change this icon that had one stroke, and it would be neutral 900. If I move to close, which now is made out of one shape, but in the previous case it was two lines. One was going like this and the other one was going like this. It would only apply the style that you had on this icon to this one, and you would always have to go back into that icon instance and change the fill again to fit in with the selection color. So by you having the selection colors on all of these icons like this, and all of them are either just one shape that's filled or just one shape that has a stroke, it allows you to control the selection colors, and anytime you make a change from one icon to the other one, it's actually going to apply the color that was in here previously. So if I switch it to blue and I go in here and go to arrow right, you can now see that the fill has changed. Now, one thing that might be a problem with this icon is that it might also have a fill of some sort. So I'm just gonna see if all of them, yeah, the X one also has a fill. So I'm gonna remove it. And okay, so now you're actually gonna see this happening. In here, I'm gonna switch it to this, and I'm gonna switch it to any other icon, and it's gonna work well. So you can sometimes see all of those things. I didn't notice that there was a fill just on this close icon, and you can see that it applied to the fill in here, so that's why this kind of fill shaped appeared. But you can see that now if I change this color and I swap the component to be a different icon, you can see how well that's working together. So just keep that in mind. One of the reasons why I have it in a frame like this is just for organizational purposes, and also because if they're on the same page, then they're going to be considered like this, like they're on the same frame and they also have the same dimensions. So Figma kind of groups them together as an element that you can just easily swap in and out of. Okay, so we covered that. And you know why I personally use this, because in some other areas I might go in and change this icon to 16, and then if I needed to quickly change the stroke, I don't have to have an instance of this icon that's like the small size. I'm just kind of reusing the same icon for everything, and you don't have to do it. I've seen other designers that instead on the main instance would turn this into a shape by doing this. So you can see it's now a filled shape. It doesn't have a stroke, but it kind of removes the control of the stroke size for me, and I personally like to have it, so that's why I keep it. Again, after a few projects, you're going to know what works better for you. There are always pros and cons. On some projects, I might go a different route and instead of stroke, skip fills. But I'm just trying to explain why I use it at a certain way and what are some of the pros and cons of doing it this way. Okay, so we can finally move into here, and I have this button. As you can see, the button text, it has a smaller line height. It's 20, and our icons are 24. And when it comes to a couple of variations of this button that I want to show you and how we can approach components, there is one reason why I purposely made the line height smaller. If you don't want to struggle with that in the future, feel free to kind of just make the line height the size of your icon, and that's going to solve all of those problems. But hopefully it's going to make sense for the demo purposes why I did it like this. So I'll just do Shift A to create an auto layout out of it. So you can see in here we have it at 8. I'm gonna switch all of this to white just because I'm going to introduce a fill like this, and we're going to slowly create a button. Now, one thing when it comes to buttons, I do like to change the left padding to be different from the right one. I've seen other design system where that's not the case. And I'll try to explain why I prefer it like this. As you can see right now, and I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller, bigger too. Yeah, I think that works better. I might even make it like this. It seems like it's more optically centered this way, if there is the same spacing around the icon while a little bit bigger spacing on the text side than if we did it like this. And just make this 8 as well. You can see that it's kind of ridiculous. Again, if we did it like this, I still don't like the fact that there's so much spacing in here when it feels like there should be more on the right side. So to balance things out, I kind of make it smaller on the left side and bigger on the right side. Most often it would either be something like this, where it's almost double the size, or somewhere in between those two numbers. So if like the first number is 12 and the double would be 24, like something around 16 or 20 would work as well. And it again depends on a lot of different factors. It's just like how I like to approach it. And this is the problem that's then introduced. If we want to have a version of this button that's not going to have an icon, if we just remove it, you can see that now we need to go in and actually adjust the padding in here as well. And you can also see that because of this line height of 20, our paddings are not working. Basically make this button that doesn't have an icon a little bit smaller. So you have to go in and make those paddings a little bit larger as well. So it kind of introduces a little bit of manual work, but we're doing it for the optical centering of this button. So that's kind of the main purpose why we're doing it. And again, some designers are going to disagree, especially because this is going to introduce a couple of more complexities when it comes to the component and how we're going to create them. But I feel like it's worth the fight in this case. If you disagree, that's completely fine, and kind of just go on and create icons in a different way. Again, what you can do is maybe make this icon a little bit smaller. And honestly, in this case, it might actually work a little bit better if all of our icons in here are actually not 24, but they're like 16 or something. But you'll have to just kind of use it to see if it's okay or not. Still, even with the smaller icon, I do think that in here we need to have smaller spacing, and in here we need to have a bigger one. What I do like to do is kind of ensure that this is going to be okay. And maybe because of that, I'm going to do something like this. And then, since I do want to make this consistent, I'm going to go in here and make this. One thing I like to do about buttons is the top and bottom spacing, I just kind of double it on the left and right side. It seems like it's the perfect way if you're doing buttons for the first time to ensure that they're kind of visually looking as good as they can. Okay, and then now we have these options. What if we wanted to introduce another button like this? Well, then you would have to go in and kind of switch the left and right padding so that they work better. And you can see that now we have kind of 3 variations in here, while if we just had one, it would be a lot easier to create a component. And I'm gonna demonstrate why. So in here, if we keep these just as they are, like same left and right padding, so 20/20, and we can make it smaller if you want to, like this, or even smaller like this. You can actually go inside this button that we've created and create a component out of it. And then you can use some neat Figma features to ensure that this button allows for all of the flexibility that you're going to need. So as you saw me click on this and create a component, I basically did it by just hitting that option on the top. And what you can see in here, we have a name for it. Let's change it to button 1 because we're going to have a different logic for these buttons on the top. And in here, we can go into each element. So this icon is something that in Figma we're going to call Boolean properties. And you can create a Boolean property by clicking on this layer option in here. That means that on the main component that we're going to have, you will have the ability to turn on this left icon. So turn it on or off, and I'm going to call it left icon. So true by default because right now we have it. And in here, we're going to go in, again, layer, create property, call it right icon, and call it false by default. So now, if we're using an instance of this button, you can see that you can turn icons on and off, and you're able to do it all just because you use Boolean properties on one component. When it comes to these options, if you want to have different paddings, you're actually going to have to create variants. So you're not going to be able to kind of control the spacing based on a Boolean property and then kind of change it around. So yeah, I think that's enough for the introductory video. Hopefully it makes sense what components are, and you can see in here that you can now go inside, you can change this into any kind of different color, and it's going to apply to the all of the instances that you have. And you can go inside, and maybe instead of white, this can be black. You can really see all of those things happen in real time. So if it ever happens that instead of the roundness like this, you actually want to make it a fully rounded button, you're able to do so with just one click in all of the areas where you're going to use this. So again, to demonstrate, maybe let's make it smaller, and you can see that in all of our potential screens in the future, wherever we use this component, it is now edited through just one click. So that's the main reason why we use components, is to kind of save up on those menial tasks of editing things after you've already designed them and reuse them in a lot of different places. And you also now know that when you're clicking on an instance, there are options in here that appear that are based on the component that you've used, and you can go inside and you're able to actually change the text. So you can kind of just like make this text example. And if you go in here and change the text of this color, it's also going to make this one, even though it doesn't say the same thing, you can still kind of change it and impact it that way. So you can overwrite things while still keeping this as a component. If you've used another tool before, like Sketch, basically components are similar to what they have in Symbols. But when it comes to Figma, they actually made components a lot better, more extensive, more flexible, and they're kind of continuously improving them. Honestly, one of the things that happened in the last couple of years is that, like, with every major release or every major event or update they had, there would always be some kind of a neat thing added to ensuring that components are even better and even easier to use and allow for even more complexity, more logic, and even more flexibility, while still ensuring that those elements are kind of easy to create, easy to reuse, and kind of stay true to what they're supposed to be. So yeah, see you in the next video. We're gonna dive in even further into components.